There's only one person that needs to hear this story that hasn't heard it yet. And I'm going to need you to come up with me. So, we have a chair set up just for you.
Oh my goodness. Uh-oh.
So, this story is one that you've heard and you're bored of. That was just for you. This is Carol's story time. If you guys want to listen in, that's fine too. I've told this story 3 times, and every time I've told it, Miss Carol has not been there. Either she was sick once, gone working somewhere one time, and something else happened the 3rd time. And so today she said something like, I want to hear that story before I die. I'm not sure how much more time I have left. And so when you hear that, you tell the story. All right, so this story is a true story, as far as I can tell. This story is a true story told to me by my aunt, my great aunt, who was a missionary in Africa for 40-some years before she came back. And her sister was a missionary in Singapore and then a bunch of other countries, I can't remember which, before she came back as well. So this story was told to her firsthand by a man named Daniel, who was college age at the time, I think in his 20s, mid-20s. So this boy's name did not start out as Daniel. It started out as a name that I cannot pronounce, and so I will not try. He was, I think, about 6 and a half, 7. He had just turned about 7. And his job every day was herding his father's cows. His father was heathen. His whole village was heathen. They all lived in very small mud huts. And if you had money, it was cows. So his father was... right? Some people are agreeing with that. His father was decently rich. He had a decent herd of cows. And so his future as a son was herding cows. And that's all there was. He wanted to study and to learn so badly, but knew probably was not going to get the chance to study, was not going to get the chance to go to school. And he begged his father often enough to get beaten when he asked. Finally one day, because the only school that he could go to was quite a ways away, I think about 40 miles walk, and it was a Adventist school, a Christian school. And he kept asking, and his dad said no. And finally, his mother and father had a little powwow, and they decided that he could go. He was about 7 years old at this point, or right in about 7 years old-ish. And they told him, yes, you can go, but, however, if you ever come back, you cannot learn about God. And if you ever come back home, which we know you will not speak about God in this home. You will not speak about God in this village, or you will no longer be our son, and we will kick you out. So, I won't, Dad, I promise I won't learn about God. I'm fine with that. I just want to learn. So off he goes on his 40-mile journey and gets to the Adventist school. And what do you think he learned about while he was there? He learned about a Savior who loved him. And he was shocked to find out that a God, a spirit that could actually love him and that died for him and that wanted Daniel to live with him. Well, while he was at the school, he decided to get baptized and to follow Christ, and was just so excited about it. Well, he spent pretty much the full year there, and for the break, he came home. When he came home, he brought a bunch of tracts with him because he wanted to continue to read as he had learned to read, and so he wanted to continue to read more about this God that loved him. So when he got home, he was bursting with this knowledge that no one in his village had. And he wanted to tell people so bad, but he remembered what his dad had said and his mother had said. And so he kept it quiet as he could. When it was time to eat, he would bow his head, close his eyes, and pray silently. And it had to happen, and one night it did. He, in conversation, went, "Dad, I know there's problems that are happening, but I know a God that loves you so much. says, Jesus, you have to know about him. And his dad said, that's it. I already told you. He said his name once. You are no longer my son. And his dad got up. He got a pot, a little pan, and a spoon, and he put them on a string, and he put them around his son's neck, and had his son roll up his bedroll, and his son got those little tracks and put in his bedroll and rolled it up. And he said, you're to leave the village. Never come back, ever. You'll never be invited here again. If you come here, we will kill you. Whew. And so Daniel, who he had taken a new name when he got baptized, which is very common in that area, we found out later why so many of the heathen people or spirit worshipers take a new name when they get baptized. The reason why is because many of them have names that are very ugly and disgusting. They're given those names because they hope these names will scare off the spirits. And so it's very common for heathen lands for them to have names that are pretty gross and kind of disgusting. And the hope is it'll scare off the spirit. So when many of them find Christ, they want to take a new name, one that's not disgusting or evil. So Daniel was no different. He took Daniel because he wanted to be faithful like Daniel was. So very discouraged, very sad. As an 8-year-old boy, he starts to walk away from all he's known his whole life as home. And on his back, he had strung the pot and the pan and the spoon, and his bedroll tied up was all of his earthly possessions. And as he walked, it was clinkety clink clank, clinkety clink clank, as he walked around. And as he was leaving the village, he really didn't know where to go. He knew staying out in the bush would be pretty much, guaranteed death. So he couldn't just stay out in the bush somewhere. So he just started walking on a path, and he wound up in another village about nightfall. And as he got there, he decided, I'm going to need food. I'm going to need a way to make a living as an 8-year-old. And the Lord gave him the idea, take one of those tracks out and sell it. And so that's what he started doing as an 8-year-old. He started fending for himself. He would walk village to village. He would find the people who could read in the village or people who just like to look at the pictures. And he would sell a tract, tell about Jesus, tell about his God who loved him and who loved the people in that village. And he was pretty successful at it. And he walked village to village. And by successful, I mean he didn't die from starvation. That's very successful. So he did that and started walking village to village. Soon he was starting to run low on tracks, and he thought, well, I'll work my way back towards where the school's at, and maybe I can get some more tracks. So as he's walking back towards the school, which by this time is many miles away, he started to come. It started to be nightfall. He started to come into a village, and this village was a little different than some, as it had a stockade all the way around the village. A pretty high stockade, sharpened sticks all the way around. And as he started to come into the village chief met him at the gate, and he says, we know who you are, and we don't want you in this village. We don't want your God in our village. Stay out. And he says, well, I just need a place to stay for the night. And the village chief says, well, here's the problem. There is a man-eating lion that's been harassing our people and been eating our people. He says it's an older lion, but it's still very powerful. We can't kill it. We can't seem to chase it down. He says, so, and he points to the horizon, and there's one lone tree, an old banyan tree out on the horizon. He says, sun's gonna be down by the time you make it to that tree. If the sun gets down before you make it to that tree, you're probably not gonna live. So I would hurry if I were you. And Daniel took his advice and started kind of loping towards that tree. Clinkety clink clank, clinkety clink clank, clinkety clink clank, all the way to that tree, and he made it. He climbed up in that banyan tree and got as comfortable as he could and kind of leaned up against the tree and thought, well, it's going to be a long night, but here I am. So before he went to bed, like every night, he prayed, asked the Lord to be with him and to protect him, to keep him safe. So as he was leaning up against the tree, started falling asleep, and he would jolt awake. You guys have all been there, driving, trying to stay awake. So he leans up against the tree and keeps jolting himself awake. Finally, he relaxes, and all of a sudden, roar! This ground just shook with this huge roar. And directly underneath him was this huge male lion. And he could tell it was an older lion, but that lion kept jumping up towards him. And so his heart was just racing, praying, oh Lord, please keep me safe from this lion. So as he was holding on to the tree, the lion kept pacing around and around that tree, looking up at him. And he kind of knew this may be it. There may not be a way out of this. And so he says, well, I've already prayed for the Lord to protect me, so I know the Lord will protect me. And he started to spend the night praying, Lord, how can I reach those people in the village? How can I reach them? I want to go there. I want them to know about you, but I have no idea how to get there. I have no idea how to reach them for you. And so he finally relaxed a little bit. The lion laid down directly underneath him, still looking up occasionally. And so he knew there was no escape, no running, until the lion chose to either leave or climb the tree. Either one, he knew he was probably dead, but he did all he could do. So he leaned back up against the tree, and it was getting on towards almost sunlight. You could see the sun starting to come up, getting a little lighter, but the sun hadn't came up. So he starts leaning up against the tree again, and all of a sudden, clink, clink, bang, he fell out of the tree. And he fell directly on top of what? He fell directly on top of the lion, and he knew if he let go what was going to happen. He knew he was going to be eaten. So as he falls on top of the lion, he wraps his arms and he wraps his legs around that lion and holds on with all of his might. And of course, at that same second, his pot and pan went clunk, clank, and hit the back end of that lion. That lion jumped up and took off, running as fast as he could. And the faster the lion that ran, clankety clank, clankety clank, clankety clank, clankety clank. And the lion ran faster and faster, and he held on more and more. And he couldn't see where they were going. He just needed to hold on. And he was praying, oh Lord, help me. And right when he didn't think he could hold on much more, the lion gave this huge leap. And he was holding on, and then as soon as the lion hit, he went end over end, clankety, clankety, clank. And the lion had just jumped over the stockade right into the middle of this village. Of course, the villagers had heard clankety clink, clankety clank, clankety clank, and a lion roaring, and they knew he's got Daniel. So they all lit their torches and lit their lanterns and came out to see, and as what they saw was Daniel riding the lion coming down the hill. The lion jumped into the village right as Daniel jumped off. The lion kept running and jumped over the side of the other stockade and took off. All of the villagers came out and said, Daniel, could you please tell us about your God? Because we don't know anyone that can ride lions. And Daniel said, yes, I can. I can tell you all about a God who loves you and wants to protect you. And yes, he can even let you ride a lion. To this day, Daniel stayed in that village for quite a while. That is an Adventist village now, a Christian village. Everyone in that village converted and found Christ. And Daniel made that kind of at his home base and spent many years as a colporteur. When my Aunt Novella met him, he was about in 20s sometime, and he had gone back to school, gone back to college to learn more theology. He wanted to become a pastor. I don't know where he's at today, but that's the story that I was told by my Aunt Novella when she came back from Africa.
Amen. Wow.
God is so good. My Aunt Novella came back when I was probably 15, which would have been 1991. I think about 1990 something. So back in the old days. Except for Sam.
Thank you.
All right. Yes,
you heard this
you're
story.
welcome, Miss Carol.